Well, hello everyone, and welcome to episode number five, six, I think. Six. Um, yeah, first, a couple things I want to talk about before get into the reading. Um, I've gotten so much wonderful feedback, and if somebody could let me know if I'm being heard and seen right now, that would be awesome. Um, just let me know. I slowly but surely figure out how to add more production value to these as it's important to me. So, yeah, somebody just put in chat real quick that they can hear me and see me. All right, thank you. Okay, so a couple things. Let me make a couple adjustments here. Yeah, happy Friday, everybody. It is um, as somebody who is an entrepreneur and works from home, very rarely do I. Um, Often I don't know what day of the week it is, or if it's like a holiday or things like that, because you just get, my life consists of trying to, as my father, endlessly promoted, and myself as well, always being in the now. Um, and obviously, we have things to be concerned about in the future, but something that was really holding me back was the fear that thinking about the future generated. So I found, and then I started, of course, asking the sacred question as to, well, how far into the future can I, uh, think? And long story short, operate my days in about hour blocks, 2 hour blocks. And, obviously the night before, I try to roughly plan my day out. Um, uh, One thing, and I apologize to those of you, the recent auction winners. I meant to go mail out the drawings today, but I actually went for a walk in the woods with my camera and my friend who I'm staying with, and it was the first time in I couldn't tell you how long that I just went for a walk in the woods, and it wasn't to film something or teach, or I just went for a walk with my friend and my camera and did some tracking and bird language, and it was amazing. And it's the irony of the outdoor educator, how much time I spend behind a computer. And it's not necessarily such a bad thing, right? It's the razor's edge that my father always spoke about, uh, leading a nature based lifestyle while existing in the modern world and doing as much good as you can in the modern world. And I like to think I'm beginning to now take it a step even further by leading people back to nature through high technology, through things like live streams and my Starlink, where once all those plans fall into place and I truly live a nomadic life, I can teach a live class from anywhere. I can be 100 miles from the nearest cell phone tower and teach a class, or, I can be I plan on, when I do get on the road, a lot of spontaneous events where um, I'll, like an hour before I'm going to broadcast something, I'll be like, hey, y'all, I just saw a sign for some cool natural area, and I'm pull over and stop and do a live stream. Uh, And, obviously things like that won't have a cost. In fact, one thing I will mention, before getting into the reading, couple things. Um, I'm getting ready, supposedly, fingers crossed, praying to any and all gods, that my stuff arrives from California, because two-thirds of the things I need to run my business and my life are there. And I'm the type of person that likes to know where my things are, and where I can go to access them. And I being that when I came back up here to Portland to house sit for my friend, I packed for being gone for 2 weeks, and it's been almost 2 months now, that I've been separating. Welcome, Nicole. Good to see you, Deb. Good to see you too. Um, so yeah, that being separated from things that are crucial to the functioning of my work life and my life, have it's been a blessing and a curse. It's been a blessing because all I've been doing is essentially free programming, and things like this. And that has led to people reaching out to me for private classes. So, as I mentioned, I'm going to be releasing a blog post with a video accompaniment, hopefully by the end of the weekend. That is going to be really eye opening, to say the least. Um, I think about my dad all the time, as a 46-year-old man who has dedicated his life, to the work that my father started all those years ago. And as I sit at my buddy's house, and I'm, in dire straits in a few different areas, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. I live life without regrets. There's not there's very few things I regret, even though the last 4 years have been the most hellish experience I've ever been through, other than the loss of my mother and my father and my dog of 18 years, um, and another very important person to me. There isn't a thing I would change about these last 4 years, because they forced me to evolve and grow in ways that I never imagined. So, I've said this before. I used to look at it as this giant lump of coal I carried around my neck that weighed me down. And then one day, actually, it was June 7th at 3:25 in the morning, as I was buck naked in a creek, 8.5 hours northeast of Anchorage, Alaska. I dove into that water, and Earth Mother stripped all of that from me. And, ever since, I have been um, seeking ways to, continue to work, continue to teach, and also provide lessons, at as affordable rate as possible, which is one of the reasons why I love online teaching, because doesn't matter if I have one person or 100. I don't have to gather any extra materials or things like that. But once I really actually do get on the road, and I fully, reveal my plans with this upcoming blog post, let's just say I think I'm gonna rock a lot of boats with what I'm about to reveal. And also something I'm super excited about. Some of you may have seen it, some of you may have not, but it is I started a 5-part free how to be better at stalking and movement series on my YouTube channel. And I did a kind of 1.5 episode that I very hastily filmed, late at night in my friend's garage, sandwiched between his motorcycle and something else because I just had to get it on film, about this idea that like sprang into my brain after reading this paragraph my father wrote a while back about a way to convey the things necessary to be an ideal human being, that is a caretaker, that is a warrior of the light, that helps their brothers, sisters, and others be the best they can. And it came to me in the form of the what I'm calling the diamond of oneness. I know it sounds like something out of a Dungeons and Dragons game, but just bear with me. And if you watch the video real quickly, I'll just rehash, and I'm going to be doing a longer video. But the diamond of oneness is this. So if we have tracking and awareness, the two most important skills in life, right? You can't be a good tracker without awareness, and vice versa. And being that we are humans that have a very short lifespan, our goal should be to squeeze every drop out of every day of life. And we can only do that through awareness, by not falling into the ruts, by not just constantly looking at your phone or at a 45-degree angle to the ground, by, just constantly moving throughout your day, embodying the way of the caretaker, taking in, volumes of information. In many of my dad's stories, you hear him tell tales of how grandfather could, look at a small patch of ground and spend the better part of a day, describing all the things that he saw there. And this concept of the diamond of oneness, if we have tracking and awareness on one side, there's a few other skills that are necessary to achieve a true state of oneness. And by oneness, I mean when you enter the forest, you are part of the forest. You belong there. You don't just you aren't just an intruder or a visitor, to where you walk up to the edge of the wilderness, an area you've never been there before, and just instantly be able to read the baseline and just know, be able to glean all this information through tracking, awareness, wide angle vision, and of course, natural movement, moving the way we're supposed to. And when we work on those four skill sets equally, that's how we begin to achieve that state of oneness, to where we can walk into the woods and instantly, through everything from bird song to any number of signs, can tell any number of things. Today, for instance, was my first time outside in the Portland, Oregon area in a while, that at least on a nature walk. And we are already a third past spring here, because over my 7 years here, I've developed a clock, so to speak, based on the seasons. Because Oregon is so unique, spring actually begins towards the end of January. So one of the first things I look for, the first sign that spring is starting, is when I start to see things like snowdrops, or the osoberry trees are starting to bud out. And then for along, and the trilliums come, and then there's all these other things, and certain birds come, and I learn how to tell the time of nature that way. So yeah, the diamond of oneness is all about honing these four areas to a point to where you walk into the woods and you belong there. You are treated by the more than human world as one of their own, and not the way a typical human that is a taker, most likely has the taker mentality, would approach it. So enough on that because I am going to be speaking. I'm going to be making a video about that and a class, in fact. So, being that this is, I believe, episode number 5, um, and as I mentioned previously, originally I promised on going in chronological order, starting with chapter 1 of the tracker, going all the way through. And right away, the first evening, my inner vision said, no, don't start with the first chapter of Tracker. Read Go Ask the Mice instead. And I did that. And ever since, I have allowed inner vision to guide what I choose to read of the many, millions or hundreds of thousands of words written by my father. Tonight I chose uh, one of my favorite stories, a sacred story to me, and one that is so full of lessons that no matter how many times you read it, you will realize something new every time you do. And that chapter is number 7 in the book The Vision, and that chapter is Grandfather and the Fisherman. And before I read, I want to say one last thing. Um, I encourage you, everybody, to seek out their own grandfather and their own fisherman. And once again, it doesn't have to be, have anything to do with nature or primitive skills. It could be just a human being who you watch and observe and think, wow, this person is really put together. They take really good care of themselves. They're kind, they're emotionally intelligent, they're helpful, good behaviors to model. And then have somebody else on the opposite spectrum. I one thing that saddens me deeply is when I think to my best friends in high school, because I actually found a picture of my senior prom last night. And I think of my friends, I graduated in 1997, and like 90% of them still live in the town we went to high school in. They do the same exact thing. And, you know, 1997 was a long time ago. Almost 30 years now, right? Uh, when I think of all the things I've done in the last 30 years, all the places I've been, all the classes I've ran, all the people I've met, all the crazy, beautiful, wonderful, terrifying, horrifying, great, awesome experiences I've had. And then I think about them and that they've just done the same thing every day since when I left there 30 years ago. And it makes me sad. It makes me really, really sad. When I was doing my walkabout that I felt I needed to do before I could, teach, I anytime I would swing through New Jersey to visit my mom or my dad, I would always try to encourage a friend of mine to come along with me on this next leg of my journey. And this is where I'm going. And one time I got a friend to go with me, and our first stop was Athens, Georgia. And within 20 minutes of getting there, he met a girl, and long story short, never left that town. Got married a few years later, had a kid, started a business there. Um, but yeah, I just it boggles my mind that people spend this beautiful experience of life that we have, and they spend so much of it chasing the false gods of the flesh, or surrendering their time to chase somebody else's dream to pay for food, clothing, and shelter, um, is just sad. It's sad, and that is my main goal in my education and the things and lessons I've arrived at lately. Many thanks due to the things left to me by my father as far as unpublished writings and such. And once again, that's just only going to be reflected in my teaching and making it that much better. So I'm gonna take a sip of water here, and I'm probably gonna cry a little bit during this chapter because I have probably heard my dad tell this story. I mean, I couldn't even tell you how many times. And whether you're here live now or you're watching a recording of this, I'm sure you may have heard him tell it many times. And that was the one thing about my father. I the whole time I worked there, there was not one time I would ever missed one of his lectures, even if it was one I had heard 1,000 times, because just like no two classes of the same subject I run are the same, he would always tell the stories a little bit differently here and there. Um, so, you know, only if you were there to catch the little variation would you. Oh, so yeah, it is from the Vision. Chapter number 7, Grandfather and the Fisherman is the title. Let me clear my throat. All right. Sometimes one must look at old things anew, changing his perspective and vision, and abandon the old ruts of thinking and experiencing. Grandfather was my greatest teacher. He taught me things on every level. In every part of his life, I found so many lessons, many without words, reaching far beyond wait, sorry, reaching far beyond the physical realms. One day, grandfather taught me a powerful lesson, just being himself. Going about his life as he always did. I don't suspect that he even knew what a profound effect his actions had on my life. Sorry, my throat's a little weird today. All I did was to look at him in a new way with the purity he so often spoke of. Sometimes teachers come when you least expect them, bearing precious gifts of knowledge that somehow tie all things together. These gifts can come as failure or negativity. Absolutely. Though there are no failures or negatives, only teachers. That's why there's no such thing as problems, only solutions. So it was with me and an old fisherman, unbeknownst to him, he became also one of my greatest teachers in life. These two events connect to each other and stand out above so many others. I call them the wisdom of Grandfather and the Fisherman. The story of Grandfather and the Fisherman is a story of two separate worlds, a contrast of separate realities. One has shown me the essence of the other, and they both have shown me how to live. One in very positive terms, and the other in the negative. Little did I know the differences they possessed could be fused into my consciousness as one harmonious teacher, but that is the natural order of things. If one knows how to learn without prejudice but with purity, there form associations, similarities, and a fusion where there could be none before. A balancing occurs, one world complementing the other, all in sharper focus than if viewed separately. Here in what follows, and through the teachings occur and though the teachings occurred many decades apart, it is the essence of living taught jointly by two very different people. Everything still sounded good? Okay. I was sitting on an old cedar stump, watching the dawn advance across the swamp. The morning was so thick with mist, especially close to the stream that cut through the boggy cedar swamps. The trunks of the huge old cedar trees. What was that noise? The let's see, yeah. The trunks of the huge old cedar trees faded from sight as they reached to the pale skies, plunging through the dense sheet of mist that clung to their upper crowns. The cedar forest appeared as a mystical temple, something of vision or dream rather than reality. Its beauty was breathtaking. The overall feeling of reverence for this place saturated my very soul. Shafts of angled sunlight cut through the lower forest with a hazy yellow-orange light that cast shadows in strange depths and mists into flowing apparitions. Dew clung to every leaf and furrowed trunk, dripping here and there, mingling with the symphony of awakening birds and the gentle surging flow of the stream. I felt as if I sat on the edge of some primordial forest at the dawn of creation. I was deep in prayer, consciously and unconsciously, losing myself in meditation and in the deeper recesses of the misty shadows. I know of no one who could have sat in this place at the edge of misty sun and shadowy forest who could not have been in prayer, at peace with creation and flooded with unspeakable awe. This kind of morning always tears away all cares and duties, all fleshly wants, and bears the soul to the elements to be washed and purified. The thrashings of the mind evaporate like the mists of dawn, and real thoughts come into ever sharpening focus. Adding their own mystique to this magical morning, deer drifted in and out of the mists, disappearing momentarily behind brush or fusing their color with that of distant trees. Everywhere animals moved, blending their motion to the flow of the forest. Another flow entered that morning. Grandfather drifted slowly down the trail to the stream. I was so excited to see him because he had been in another part of the forest. I wanted to go to him, but the intrigue of sitting there and watching him held me in place. I know that he knew I was there, for there was little he missed in the woods, and I'm sure the nuances and disturbances easily gave away my location. Whether he knew I was there or not, he showed no interest and continued walking slowly towards the stream. He stood for a long time gazing at the water, as if distance would put it into perspective. He glanced up and down the stream, leisurely and methodically, as if searching for something. His eyes rested on the cathedral of cedars for a longing moment, and I caught the glisten of a tear on his cheek. To me, he appeared as if he were about to enter a temple and about to see God. As I sat and watched, my mind took a strange turn. Changing reality and dropping the self, all analysis ceased, and I began to look at grandfather as if I were watching some stranger. It was a nebulous feeling, a thinking with no parameters or consciousness of time and place. Watching him was like watching a surrealistic dance or play, with unnamed characters and dreamlike landscapes. The whole relationship between grandfather and me was viewed like a fantasy, a distant reality not of this place. I was fascinated and intrigued by his actions. I saw each move as if I had never seen it before. Though I had known grandfather for over 8 years, his movements overwhelmed me now. Sometimes one gets so close to something that he can only see it in parts, separate from the whole. Sometimes, too, one gets so familiar with something that the commonplace, the awe, The everyday teachings fade from view, like trying to see a flower by holding it against the eye. That is essentially what I had done to grandfather. Turned the power of his everyday teachings into a faded commonplace event. He approached close to the water's edge again and stood with his arms raised in an attitude of worship. Again looking upstream and downstream as if searching, pausing at every glistening riff and misty hollow in his gaze. I could see clearly the streams of tears on his cheeks, glistening in the sun, and the contented smile on his face. He kneeled down solemnly and touched the water, ever so gently, as he watched his own concentric rings ripple and mix with those of the water strider. He began to stroke the water as if it were a living being, looking deep into its color and to the mosaic of sand mixed pebbles at the bottom. He drew his face close to smell the water, then took a light sip. He sat back with the water in his mouth and swished it back and forth. His actions would have put the most experienced wine taster to shame. Reaching deeper into the water with cusped hands, he raised the water to the Creator in thanksgiving. Then and only then did he drink. Standing erect once again, he dropped his blanket and entered the water. I could see his entire body trembling with excitement and the smile on his face. As he lay back in the water, he was one of total rapture. Rapture, something I never see in society's world, except, rapture, something I never see in society's world, except as a word, but not an emotion. Society does not seem to know what rapture is, far less what it feels like. Just like rapture is to society, water is something for them to guzzle, put there for their use or misuse, and never given a second thought. To grandfather, water was Earth Mother's blood, a precious gift of life for all things living and growing, and not just for man. My mind raced back over the events of what took place, searching them for meaning. I should not have been shocked at all, for he had done nothing new. He always approached water that way, solemnly, in reverence, and like a child. Even though he swam in thousands of different waters, stood at the foot of the most significant waterfalls, and drank the purest waters on earth, all his life he still entered water this way. No, it should not have shocked me, for this was the way he was with everything, the whole of creation. That day, I had backed away and seen for the first time what had always been there. Grandfather savored everything in life as he savored the water, fully and with all his senses, to a state of utter rapture. He would walk through the forest, fondling the leaves, touching flowers, hugging trees, and lifting loam and cupped hands to smell. He would observe even the most common things for long periods of time, extracting every nuance from them. Life was always new and fresh to him, an adventure packed with excitement. He was a child, always at play, always searching, tasting, touching, smelling, hearing, and seeing the world and life fully. To him, every entity of earth was an object of worship, his life a constant prayer of thanksgiving, and his quest was always for rapture. In watching him live that day, I learned how to live and the true meaning of life. But then there was the fisherman who taught me how not to live. Many years. Oh, let me take a sip here real quick. Many years after grandfather's physical death, I was seated on another beach, awaiting the sunrise. The ocean was still black, the waves were accented with the pale glow of dawn, and the silhouettes of gulls appeared at the edge of dawn and darkness. Lonely cries of gulls, the soft wind moving the sand in a gentle hissing, and the light clap of waves created a soothing music for the soul. God, I miss the sound of the ocean. Prayers seemed to reach to the skies, penetrating the scant cloud cover, now etched in the liquid gold of dawn. The beach was deserted except for a lone fisherman who sat on a beach chair a dozen yards away from me. He was gray and weathered. His skin showed overexposure to the sun and surf. He looked like, and his clothing looked like those of styles long forgotten. He stared intently at the tip of his rod, watching it bob and shift and with the rise and fall of the wave and wind. He seemed to solely concentrate on that rod tip, looking away only to his watch, probably out of habit. In time, I moved closer to him. The sun now fully broke the horizon, bringing with it deep warmth. Gull voices increased, and the old fisherman and I slipped into light conversation. We talked about fishing and tides, weather and fishing beaches, but mostly about him. He said he had been fishing these beaches for over 30 years, and since his retirement a few years ago, he bought a house near the beach. Now he fishes every day without fail. The only time he said he didn't fish was when the beaches were crowded or during the coldest of winter days when the storms made it impossible. Our conversation soon trailed off, and I went back to my sunrise and he to his rod tip. As my thoughts drifted with the tides, I unconsciously picked up a handful of beach sand and began studying its texture and color. I smelled it a while, then held it up to the sunlight, watching it sparkle and change color. I always loved beach sand and how it changes its size, color, shape, and texture with each new beach. I guess that I guess that I was so caught up in that I was doing that I didn't notice the fisherman staring at me. He must have thought I was holding some sort of shell when he asked, "What you got there?" Astonished at his inquiry, I answered matter of factly, "Beach sand." "Beach sand," he said. "What the hell is so interesting about beach sand? It's all the same, white and gray, sticks to everything." I wouldn't have paid this statement even a second thought except for the fact that it was said in a mocking way. "White and gray," I said. "Old man, please pick up some beach sand and look." He grumbled something and went back to watching his pole. I had got up and walked a few steps away when some feeding terns caught my eye, and I sat back down to watch. I was watching them hovering and diving near the edge of the jetty when I happened to glance back at the fisherman. In his weathered hand, he held a handful of beach sand, stirring it around with his finger and holding it close to his face. I heard him talking, half out loud and half to himself. "My God!" he exclaimed, his voice bitter and breaking. "My God, never realized." As I left the area, I glanced back at the old man to wave goodbye, but he wasn't watching me. In his outstretched hands, he held a blue fish to the sun. I could see the colors glistening on the yeah, sorry. I could see the colors glistening in the sun, and I could see the tears glisten on the old man's cheeks. His hands trembled. Dropping the fish, he hunched over, sobbing silently to himself. I wanted to go to him so very badly, but there was nothing I could do. The horror, I thought. Here was a man who had spent the better part of his lifetime fishing these beaches, but he did not know what beach sand looked like. Here was an old man who, in the twilight of his life, saw a bluefish for the first time, a fish that he loved so much to catch, but he never really knew. The words of Marcus Aurelius thundered into my brain. It is not dying that a man should fear, but a man should fear never having lived at all. That is when, that is what had broken the fisherman down to tears, realizing at this late time in his life all the things he missed, all the things he would never see, all the wasted time, time that has been spent never to be made up, the horror of it all, the absolute senseless waste of life, the living dead. I learned from that old man more than he could ever know. I learned not to waste my life living to die, but rather to live a life of rapture. I never saw that old man again, though I've been back to that beach many times. He will always be with me. However, and I think of him often, I carry him in my heart as one of my greatest teachers, and I wonder how many people are out there just like him. I wonder how many people will never really see a sunset or sunrise. How many will never know the sands or the sparkle of a bluefish? How many will never know how to savor water, to really touch someone they love, or to know the rapture of life? I wonder how many people are rushing through life blindly, never really sensing what living is all about. Several times a day I ask myself, am I being grandfather or am I being the fisherman? The choice is always up to me, and everyone has to make that choice sooner or later, hopefully not too late in life, as did the fisherman. And so it went. Tears on the cheeks of two different old men, tears of sadness, and tears of rapture. Out of all the things that I work to fight against in this world, not fight against, but work against, is increasing people's awareness so they don't end up living the life of the fisherman. I have a sort of family member, my ex ex husband's father, retired when he was 72 years old, sold his company for 80 something million dollars. He was retired for 2 weeks before he went and got a job at Walmart as a greeter. $80 million. And he went and got a job at Walmart as a greeter because he had spent his whole life working, building this thing, earning this money, having all these things, but never having time to enjoy them. Um, and he just didn't know what to do with his life without his work. I mean, look at the rate of people, how soon many people perish after they retire. It doesn't matter health conditions or not. That's because we are lied to from birth in this world, this modern world we've built. We're lied to and told that when we get there, that's where the happiness is. When we have that much money, when we have that car, when we have this, that, or the other thing, that's when life really begins. In my almost 27 years of teaching, I have taught movie stars, rock stars, billionaires, millionaires, You know, any kind of celebrity you can think of. People who have achieved what our society deems to be the pinnacle. And all but a very small handful of them are some of the most miserable people on the planet because all they do is work. They make all this money, but they don't have time to enjoy it. And that's so sad. The happiest people I know are, people like I'm trying to become. I don't seek fame or riches. I seek to make the world a better place and hopefully earn enough money to pay some basic bills and have a steak every once in a while. But the people I know who are truly awake, aware, alive, they've made their avocation their vocation. And while it may not make them a ton of money, they're happy as hell because they get to do what they love for a living. And that's the one thing that keeps me going through all of this, through everything I've been through, is the fact that I love what I do um, so deeply. I find that sense of rapture every time I pick up any skill I've made or a skill that somebody's working on, and walking out into the forest and just knowing the beings intimately that are there and not just on a observational level. I live for those moments, and I want more of my fellow humans to experience life through my eyes. It's my driving force, you know. When my father started the tracker school back in 1978, it was a Tom Brown Jr.'s tracking, nature, and wilderness survival school. And for the first many decades, we taught mostly skills classes, wilderness survival, and then moving into the advanced skills. Personally, I hate the word survival. You are only in a survival situation um, until once you've got some sort of shelter, if it's needed for that time of year, once you've identified a water source, uh, you're not in a survival situation anymore, in my eyes. Maybe if you're less experienced, probably still. But, knowing that I have the ability to walk out into the woods and, depending on what I bring in the time of year, probably make it. Um, if I were to go out now naked with nothing, I wouldn't make it. But if I were to go out there now with all of my wool on and, my hatchet, a few modern tools, I could make it plenty a long time. And knowing that I have that freedom to do that if I want to, um, just knowing it, even though right now I am as shackled as anybody by debt and by gas stations and car payments and learning coding and internet stuff and live streaming. um I do it all in order to lead just that one more person back, just to connect with that one more person, to cause that sea change. Because I think right now, as a world society, we are beginning to wake up and realize that, hey, we can't really keep damaging our earth as much, otherwise uh, she's not going to let us hang out here much longer. That's why I always laugh when people talk about saving the earth. I'm like, no, you're not talking about saving the earth, you're talking about saving your own ass. The earth will be just fine. You know, it's us that is going to go because we've had the ability to exempt ourselves from natural law through our big brains and our thumbs and modern medicine. But what a lot of doctors won't tell you is there's a crisis in the healthcare community right now because we are rapidly moving into an anti antibiotic age where antibiotics are not working. And, you know, things like COVID, while, to me was an inconvenience because I lived in the middle of nowhere. Um, I know people who passed away from COVID. My friend April, who's younger than me, got one dose of one of the vaccinations and, messed up her heart. And it was the same vaccination I got. And I have a heart condition from Lyme disease where if I had gotten her reaction, I wouldn't be doing this live stream right now. I would be alongside my father, um, you know, up in the ethers. Uh, there are things out there that we like to think that because we have these big brains and all this fancy crap that we have lord and dominion when Mother Nature isn't even begun to show the wrath she is capable of producing. Anyway, folks, thank you for yet another wonderful episode of T3 Reads TBJR. So, a couple quick notes in closing. Originally, I had planned on doing this twice a week, but as I'm starting to get a lot of requests for private online mentoring and I'm getting ready to release my online class schedule, I'm going to keep it to Fridays at 5 p.m. That seems to be a good time slot. Um, Once again, it's hard being in Portland and wanting to make it as globally available as possible. You know, thank God we can, thank God it gets recorded. But yeah, so I'm going to keep it to 1 day a week. And yeah, spread the word. I'm really lately started to dive into YouTube. I'm going to be putting up a ton of, free content on the skills I teach. In fact, so much free content that, you know, who knows? You just have to wait for my blog post and my video. But yeah, I'm super excited because I'm getting ready to record a little video about this idea of the diamond of oneness. Because as an educator, I'm always seeking ways of leveling people up as fast as possible, but without having them miss any of the importance of the dirt time. And if you get what I'm saying. And that's what this whole idea of behind the diamond of oneness is. Until next time, everybody, stay happy, stay healthy, love each other, love everything, hug a tree, go roll around in the grass, live in an open state of thanksgiving because it's the most sincere form of prayer because you're not asking for anything, you're just being thankful. And most importantly, and those of you who have taken an awareness class with my old man or me know the number one most important lesson in awareness and the story I just told is choice. Is every morning waking up, every morning I have a ritual. Number one, I don't touch an electronic device till I've been awake for at least an hour. But first, the first thing I say when I wake up every morning out loud is, today is the first day of the rest of my life. And then I, and then internally, I choose to embrace grandfather's way of approaching life and approaching the world as best as I possibly can. And when you do that, I promise you, you will see life from a whole different angle. Things will magically come alive. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but trust me, now more than ever, we need people out there passing these teachings along. So until next Friday, I will see you then. I may do another live stream between now and then. If you subscribe to my YouTube and set up reminders, that'll let you know before I live stream. And I may eventually move this over to my website as well, so that it can be more Zoom fashion, so I can see people and we can have an in dialogue afterwards. Because for some reason my YouTube, yeah. But anyway, thank you all so much for being here tonight. I look forward to continuing to grow this, as well as quite a few other projects that I've been working on lately and will be sharing very much happy good news about very soon. Because every day I get closer to my goal, which is to be fully nomadic, you know, essentially a ancient gypsy wandering the country, teaching people how to live, and for as cheaply as I possibly can. Usually if you want to book me for a private class, you got to pay for the plane flight, class cost, all that. I'm going to bring the skills to you. In fact, I'm even having a cheesy white magnet sign made up for the side of my van that I'm hoping to somehow manifest so I can actually carry everything I need to do my job. But it's literally going to say SKILLZ dash number two dash U, skills to you. But yeah, that's how important this is to me. And I will, as my father before me, I will teach until my last breath. I will teach even if it's a crazy person under a bridge with a sandwich board telling people to be in wide angle vision. But it won't get that far. I love you all very much. Um, I'm always available for questions. Feel free to reach out to me through any of the usual channels. I am an open book to my students, and will gladly help you in your personal journey in any way that I possibly can. Because while I may suck at running my own life and business at times, I have an uncanny ability through my skills of tracking and awareness to help other people with their lives and businesses. Which is the irony there is so thick, can't even cut it with a knife. But anyway, love you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Get outside, breathe some of that fresh air, and learn something new every day. That's your homework assignment. All right. Peace and love, everybody.